In this video, I'm going to talk about the law of diminishing returns and how it relates to you and your hobby painting. So there's something known as the law of diminishing returns. What that is it is a point at which the effort that you're expending is now more than the benefit that you're getting back. Sometimes it relates to, again, like I said, effort. Sometimes it relates to money. There's all kinds of different things that can be used in business, but it's also something that you can find in life. And I've found that it's also something that you can really, really find in hobby painting. So the important question is the effort that you're putting in going to actually have a beneficial outcome? Let me explain. So a lot of people will use a lot of extra layers. You'll see people who will put 30 or 40 layers sometimes of glazes, or very, very, very light, lightly, just barely colored water. When you see like the guys who are out there doing really pro, super high-end work, they are taking incredible amounts of time to work on these pieces and to get them to the level that wins, the crystal brush and things like that. But for you and I, who want to have nice looking stuff on the tabletop when we're out there playing, we don't want to go that direction, do we? Not usually, no. So the question is, what kind of steps can you take early on when you are a beginning painter that will give you the best bang for your buck, for the lack of a better term, and allow you to see the biggest differences in your painting from, say, 1 week to the next? What are those things? What's the stuff out there at which point you can be sure that you're on the right side of the law of diminishing returns? As it turns out, one of the best things you can do is to actually paint. There are a lot of people out there who watch a lot of videos and they read a lot of blogs and they talk on forums and discussion boards, and they don't actually paint that frequently. Yeah, they painted maybe a couple of years ago. Oh, I painted when I was a kid. But they're not painting now. They think about it and they think about it and they think about it, but it doesn't actually happen. Actually taking a brush, getting a little wet, putting it in some paint, and putting that paint onto a surface is a humongous step forward. That model will now have paint on it, which if it didn't before, right there, boom, your chart for diminishing return, you've done something spectacular to that piece of plastic or metal. You've actually added paint to it. So I'm sounding snarky, but the fact of the matter is you have to actually do the effort and start painting, because when you do, you will immediately start to see benefits, and you will be able to use little techniques that will allow you to get big gains. The next thing you can do, besides just actually putting some paint on a model, is to actually listen to the tutorials that you see out there. We live in a time right now where anybody can learn anything very quickly and very easily by going on the internet. You're doing it right now by watching this video. The fact of the matter is that when people tell you to thin your paints. See what I'm saying? You will find that actually doing what veterans have been telling you to do, even though, I know I'm supposed to thin my paints, but I just don't want to because I'm lazy, or what. Making those actual things, you will see an amazing leap forward in your painting very quickly. I have done a video quite some time ago about basically that same thing, thinning your paints, and how to thin your paints using a wet palette, which you can see the video for, pachow, up here. I have had comment after comment after comment on that thread, through Facebook, wherever, of people telling me I can't even think about going back to before because they have made this step. And it's a little step. You make yourself a little wet palette. It's not that hard. You just go and do it. You could go buy one if you want to, whatever, depends on what you want to do. But that makes your painting go from level 1 to level 20, just that quickly. And finding those little things, learning more and applying them, putting them into actual practice, you will see your paint. And we see it all the time in the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club. People who are like, well, this is my 5th model and here's my 1st model. And you see just the transition from here's the 1st thing I did, here's the 5th thing I did, and the amazing movement forward. It's very easy. It really is. It's very easy early on to go from I have no idea what I'm doing to I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, at least for tabletop level, and being able to move up. By just finding some good techniques, spending a little time, spending a little effort, following the techniques that you've been learning and stick with them, and then look for new ones, you can take your painting, the graph, that's an upwards line very quickly. The trick is that when you start to get very good, like let's say Sam, it's difficult to keep progressing once you get to a certain point. That's the whole point of the law of diminishing returns. You get to a point where you become to a level where getting, higher and higher up in that level takes more and more and more work, but you're not necessarily moving that much further along. That's the whole trick. But the good news for those of us who don't want to go and paint, display stuff, or those of you who've just gotten into the gaming and just gotten into the painting and the hobby, you can really, and you have to believe me here, if you follow the techniques, you can really actually get pretty good pretty quickly and make stuff that can go quite nicely onto your tabletop. I'm not saying that everybody is going to be a display painter. I have been painting for quite some time. I'm nowhere near a display painter, but I do a pretty good job on the tabletop. I can do pretty good tabletop stuff because I've been paying attention. I've been reading, I've been watching videos, and I've been, frankly, experimenting. That can be another big thing. That once you get to a point where you're like, you've got a bunch of stuff under your belt and you've really raised up your level, you can start thinking about things, being like, well, what if I did sprinkle some salt on that? Would that give it an interesting texture? Or, well, what if I used watercolors instead of just regular acrylic? There's a lot of little things you can do, and you can test them out. You don't have to test them on your models that you're working in progress on. You can test them on all kinds of things. But because you have this other stuff, these other things under your belt, these techniques, it then allows you to start thinking about experimentation. So starting out, if you are a new painter, or if you've got friends who are new painters, share this video with them and let them understand that it is really not that hard to go from never putting a brush onto a model to doing pretty good work with some patience and with paying attention to some techniques online, looking for blog posts, videos, all that kind of stuff. Learning some techniques and actually doing it, you can really progress quite quickly to a point where you're doing pretty decent work. It's the next levels beyond that, where you have to put in more and more and more and more effort to get little gains. But the question you have to ask yourself is, do you even want to go that far? I may paint something or try to paint something for display this year. I've got an idea in my head. This would not be a gaming piece. This would just be something that would sit in a little cabinet or on the table or whatever. I don't know that I'll be able to pull it off, and I'm okay with that. But for those of you who are just starting out, really seriously, think about how if you just follow a lot of the techniques, do the things that people say online, thin your paints, understand your color wheel, all these different things that I've been talking about in my videos for quite a while and other people do online every day, learn that stuff, try it out, and you will find very quickly that your skill levels will go up greatly. If you're already a pretty good painter, you probably understand just as well as anybody else that making your level keeping to go up, that takes a lot more work. So the important question is, why is my face itch?